Independent thoughts, independent life. This is Chad Benson.
This is the Chad Benson Show. My name is Craig Collins, filling in one more time. We're doing it one more time, and then we have a best-of show for you guys tomorrow. Chad Benson is back after the new year. I want to start with this audio because it made me happy. I don't know if it's going to make you happy. I don't know where your position lands on whether or not every single politician deserves the vaccine before everyday Americans, before people in at-risk groups. Ron DeSantis agrees with me that maybe we can focus on the people most in need and get to the politicians just a tad later. He was asked if he's had the vaccine already, and this was his incredible response.
No, so what I've said is I'm willing to take it, but I am not the priority. They're the priority. I'm under 45, and so the people under 45 are not going to be first in line for this. And so when it's my turn, I will take it. But this is who I want to be vaccinated. I want my parents, our grandparents, to be able to get it. And, you know, granted, I mean, I'm an elected official, but whoop-de-doo. At the end of the day, let's focus where the risk is.
I gotta love the part at the end there. I can't imagine how much Kamala Harris, who just had her press conference the other day, hated to hear this.
Official, but whoop-de-doo. At the end of the day, let's focus where the risk is.
Whoop-de-doo. Let's focus on where the risk is. Let's get people who need this most the vaccine first, and then I'll get it when I am in line to get it. I don't know if there really is much of a reason to debate this, because, okay, if you're an elected official, if you're the president of the United States or anybody else, yes, you deserve to get the vaccine probably sooner than people in your same age bracket, people in the same at-risk categories you're in, because you're vitally important to our security. Certainly the president is. And then I think that trickles down to most other politicians. But isn't it odd the way that you see these? And by the way, and as I mentioned previously on this show, that Kamala Harris is one of those human beings who had said she wasn't sure she was going to get the vaccine during a Trump administration because she couldn't trust it because Donald Trump was involved. And now that, of course, everyone's doing the vaccine thing and scientists have told you it's safe, she goes and gets hers the other day and does it in public with her husband, who gets it too, and praises all the scientists involved. Doesn't say anything about Warp Speed, Operation Warp Speed, and how the president might have made the vaccine available quicker than an administration other than his could have gotten that done. But hey, that's just them. But it is odd to see these sort of public displays of vaccination happening. And I know that a part of it, too, is to encourage many Americans to go get vaccinated when it's available to them. But that's the rub. It might take a long time to be available to you, depending on where you live, what brackets you're in, what, at-risk categories you're in, and also, I guess, how influential you are. It would be very sad if, like, the Instagram influencers of the world started having access to these sort of things before the rest of us did. But that is sort of the path that some of us feel that we could be on. And Ron DeSantis obviously disagrees with going down that path. All right, let's get to this, too. Senator Josh Hawley talked yesterday quite a few times. I think he was on a lot of different TV programs and even this morning because he is going to object on the 6th to the election results, at least in Pennsylvania, maybe some other places. I have said and will say again and again, as Josh actually points out while he's talking, Democrats have done this. Democrat people in the House do it all the time. They've done it actually every Republican that's won the presidency in the 2000s has been objected to by at least one member of the House. You need a member of the Senate to do it as well in order to actually break apart and deal with the conversation. But it's procedural. It's going to take a few hours extra. There's story after story of this happening actually in 2004 when it last did, that a member of the Senate stepped up, confirmed what the House was saying, that they weren't sure about the election results, and they go into their corners and they discuss and debate and figure out ways to validate it more. This has all happened before. This is not the end. Amy Klobuchar put up on Twitter that this was like disgusting and going to be stopped and just a horrible way to try to have a coup to win the election. It's just ridiculous. This stuff is ridiculous for people to say when they have been in political positions to see this happen. Every time a Republican wins, at least one member of the House objects, if not many, many members. And then only once in the last few years, in 2004, did a Senate member pick up and go with it. But Josh makes an excellent point as to why he's going to do it.
I don't recall hearing the Democrats make any such outrageous claims when they were the ones who were objecting during the Electoral College certification in 2004 and 2016. Democrats have done this for years in order to raise concerns about election integrity. Now when Republicans, 74 million Americans, have concerns about election integrity, we're supposed to just sit down and shut up? I mean, somebody has to stand up here. You've got 74 million Americans who feel disenfranchised, who feel like their vote doesn't matter, and this is the one opportunity that I have as a United States Senator, this process right here, my one opportunity to stand up and say something, and that's exactly what I'm going to do.
He's going to get derided. He's going to continue to get derided like he's already been by most of the media. It's not even just politicians. You see the bias in the media in the way they cover this because, as I said, it's so simple for anyone that covers this story to say that this has happened before, that Democrats do this. And I know the President of the United States has put a glaring spotlight on his interpretation of voter fraud and of a manipulated election that so far, according to any courtroom he's brought his cases to, has not been valid. And you need the courtrooms to start getting on the same page in order to have something crack, something break, and actually, change the outcome of the election. But because of his maybe broadcasting on this issue and talking about it as much as he has, and even when things have not gone his way legally in the challenges that have been brought forth, a lot of challenges, he has continued to talk about it as if it is, in his mind, a fact that the election was fraudulent, the election was stolen. Maybe that is the only reason that there's so much focus on it, but I don't even believe that. To be honest, as I say all that, I believe that the talking heads, that the television and the way in which news goes these days, people like Jim Acosta would be standing up and just absolutely begging for this sort of thing to stop because it's destroying our society. And it would be so ridiculously unfair for even people like him to say those sort of things because they've covered elections in the past when this has happened. And just because it's been something they agree with, they kind of go, well, okay, this is how it's going. It'll be fine. This is just a procedure and we'll all get back to business as usual. And I can't point out enough times. And actually, I've done this show and I've been told every so often that I talk about Hillary Clinton too much. I don't know if it's just me and President Trump that still care. A lot of people don't care. But Hills, back in October, was saying of this year that she thought the 2016 election was rigged, was fraudulent, and she still was looking for proof into those kind of things. That's the last person that Donald Trump beat in an election 4 years later, still pretty sure that Russia stole the election from her. So this is not new in any way, shape, or form for anyone on the left side of the aisle to doubt, election results like a candidate does. In this case, I guess the president now mimics what Hillary feels about 2016, and also just senators, Congress people, everyone involved. This has all been seen before. It's all not surprising, not shocking, not the end of our society. We'll make it past the 6th. It'll be amazing. Today is New Year's Eve. I am so excited for the end of 2020. I have to assume most people out there feel the same way. And I should apologize early on, actually, for this, too. I've been told a couple times on Facebook, the Craig Collins Show is where you can find me on Facebook, by lovely new listeners to me, that I talk too fast. And I think I'm just excited about the end of this year, everybody. I think I'm just excited. But I might steal something from Jimmy Fallon later on in the show and slow jam some news for everybody so that I slow it down a bit. One of my listeners was very kind in saying that she loves listening to me, but I need to take a chance to breathe. That's true. I do. I'll do all that. It's the last day of 2020, though, people. It's going to be a tough day for me to calm down because it's so exciting that we're about to blast this year into the past. Oh, I can't imagine the parties this evening. And I'd love on Twitter, Chad Benson Show on Twitter, Chad Benson Show on Facebook, or my Facebook page, The Craig Collins Show. Tell us what you're going to do to celebrate today. Anything. I don't care if it's a party with people that you're supposed to or not supposed to be doing. I'm not going to judge. I'm not going to tell you what to do with your life. Or if you're just going to, do something special at the end at midnight to can this year behind us. Any and all ideas welcome throughout the show today, throughout the evening tonight. It'll be the end of 2020, and I cannot wait for it. Craig Collins filling in on the Chad Benson Show. Excited and trying to slow down.
Check check out our Chad Benson Show Facebook page where you can hang out or hang your grievances out to dry. This is Chad Benson.
This is the Chad Benson Show. My name is Craig Collins filling in. Mitch McConnell has shot down the stimulus and shot down old Bernie Sanders. A lot of things going on actually in the world. I'm tempted to go to Bernie first, but no, let's go to Mitch first. Mitch is talking about the fact that what's actually being proposed right now in the Senate and what passed in the House isn't necessarily what President Trump was asking for. Yes, President Trump believes that $2,000 and not $600 should be going to a lot of American people. However, both times he has made that point, it is true to mention that he has added an additional factor, an additional kind of clause or whatever, what have you. One, revisiting the amount of money spent in other areas on a bill that was bloated in and of itself and for some reason connected to the stimulus package, or at least look into tech companies and maybe change some laws to allow tech companies to be more capable of getting in trouble for things that are horrible that pop up on their platform all the time. But here is Mitch talking about exactly that.
But now our colleague from Vermont is again putting political stunts before the needs of our men and women in uniform. Our colleague says he will slow down this vital bill unless he gets to muscle through another standalone proposal from Speaker Pelosi that would add roughly $500 billion to the national debt, which does not align with what President Trump has suggested and which has no realistic path to quickly pass the Senate.
Yeah. So right now, the current bill, the way in which it passed with Pelosi, just let's hand more money to every American and not necessarily revisit any of the other things we were up to in the last few days. That doesn't have, unfortunately, a very good chance of passing in the Senate. I know a lot of Americans, especially those in need, would really struggle to understand the nuanced points there. And I'm not saying that I totally get them either, because if the president is begging for $2,000 for every American, a lot of us would like to see that happen, even on the side of the aisle that voted for the president. If you're someone who likes that guy, and obviously millions and millions of Americans do, they voted for him, you probably agree that you'd like to see more cash in the next few days. And unfortunately, that may not happen. And there's a lot of reasons why, I guess. But the biggest of them is what Mitch points out there in saying that the House isn't really interested in everything President Trump is saying, and they're just interested in one sentence, the $2,000 per American. Now, what I think is tremendously interesting is that right now, it's such a unique time period for our politics in general for a lot of reasons. But one of the biggest ones is that the president of the United States is so on the same team as people like Bernie Sanders, people like Nancy Pelosi, to an extent, in just looking to get this money to the American people. You would think that everybody on that side of the aisle would praise him. And I know I'm being maybe a little bit of wishful thinking. Maybe this is naive millennial me coming out for a second. Millennial me who just got a text from my mom having her tell me that it's okay that I talk fast. We're from the East Coast, honey. My mother texts my radio shows often, and I don't know why I read those texts on the air. It makes me sound like a small child, but I guess that's what it is. But here, let's get to the audio of Sanders crapping all over President Trump at a time when you would think that he would do the exact opposite.
Happy New Year to you, sir. You've called President Trump a racist, a sexist, a xenophobe, a religious bigot, a demagogue, a liar. But now you say he's a visionary when it comes to 2000.
I didn't say visionary. No, I didn't, Brett. I think President Trump is the most dangerous president in the history of our country, but he happens to be right on this issue. I think he is correct in saying that we are living in a terrible, terrible economic moment for tens of millions of working class families. We fought very hard to get the $600 direct payment. Trump is right in saying that's not enough. We need to go to $2,000. I didn't say he was a visionary. He's right on this issue.
I love that. I love the fact that he throws in that he's the most dangerous president in the history of our country. Why? Why do it? And look, fine. If Brett adds the aspect that you said visionary and you didn't, fine, make that correction. Like, no, I didn't call him a visionary. No. We're not going golfing anytime soon. I'm not a huge fan of this guy. That's fine. But to add the most dangerous president in the history of our country, it just seems like a silly backhand slap from Bernie Sanders, who, by the way, if ever elected to be the president of our country, is probably the most dangerous president that you could possibly have out there, because all of his ideas seem to be completely against all the main values of our society, of our country, as far as the things that he would do given a chance to be in office. So it's interesting the word he chooses. It's also just interesting that at a time when the president's the main talking point, the headline, the thing that all of us click on when we're on a Facebook or on a Twitter, we don't read a whole article. We see a headline, we click on the article, and we read a couple paragraphs. That's what everybody in life does. That's where Trump is completely on the same team, President Trump, as everyone on the left. Give Americans more money, and they still, everybody, it seems, the talking heads, the news people, journalists, whoever, can't help but crap on him anyway. All right, I got to transition, and I don't have a lot of time. I might have to get to this story again later on in the show, but I love it, and I don't know why I love it so much, and maybe you're going to judge me a little bit for liking this story as much as I do, and that's fine. I would never do something like this. I just want to put that out there first and foremost. There's a guy in Mexico who got in trouble recently because he dug a giant tunnel under his home, which is something that people in Mexico do a lot. Usually they're trying to tunnel into our country, sadly, and bring drugs in with them. There's been crazy, elaborate tunnels discovered with like motorcycles in them. This is also the way I think they got El Chapo out of jail a bunch. But this dude did it for a very unique reason. He was creating a tunnel in his backyard to go to his mistress's home. He had a secret lover named Pamela who lived somewhere relatively close to his house, and he had a tunnel coming up into part of her backyard. He got caught by the husband of the mistress. The amount of I can't even fathom confidence, whatever you have, that like this is going to be okay, is surreal to me. Not to object to just infidelity in general, which I do. I'm a good Catholic boy. But the fact that if you had all of these situations play out, and how do you even talk to somebody who was doing that, digging a tunnel to your house? I mean, do you tell the girl before you do it? Is this the kind of thing you surprise her on New Year's Eve with? Like, look, my new gift to you, we have a tunnel between our homes, a tunnel that we're not going to be able to hide very well from our significant other. It is surreal, this story. You're not going to hear about it anywhere else. I pride myself on finding you the news you can't use that's not anywhere other than here. But this guy, his name is Antonio. He is a bricklayer by profession. I guess he knows a thing or two about making a tunnel, too. He tried and failed, although I successfully got the tunnel. How devastating would that be? This is such a horrible way to say this, because obviously you're a bad person, Antonio. But to dig the whole tunnel, get caught, and then have it be useless. That's my question. Maybe I shouldn't have asked it. Craig Collins filling in on the Chad Benson Show.
The Chad Benson Show.
Independent thoughts, independent life. This is Chad Benson.
This is the Chad Benson Show. My name is Craig Collins filling in. Happy to be here. Chad will be back in the new year. Joe Biden's mental health suddenly seems to be the focus of many people. And more people, I think, by the day, whether or not there's other things that Biden, his son, or anyone else might wind up getting in more trouble for as far as the court of public opinion is concerned, then maybe he should have gotten in trouble back before the election was completed. Now it seems that those things might be more fair game. It's kind of interesting as to why all this is happening the way it is. Lara Logan gave us some insight, some detail into this earlier this morning. I thought this was very interesting.
It's funny to see people reporting on this now and complaining about it, and as if the most of the media is now suddenly remembered how to be journalists, and they're going to be challenging. It was obvious that they had a policy of getting Biden into the administration, and now it's equally obvious to many that I talk to that they're working on getting Biden out of the administration because...
You know what's really interesting as I pause that for a second? I'm not sure, and I'm just going to say it. I'm going to take the biggest risk I'm going to take today on New Year's Eve and say this out loud because I feel like it deserves to be said. Back when Biden was running to even be the candidate on the Democratic side of the aisle, a lot of people thought that he was a fake candidate, that someone was going to come along and just full on replace him, that he would step down even after winning the nomination and someone would come along. I think Michelle Obama was the biggest whisper the entire time, and that not that she had any interest. Oprah, of course, was another one. So it's not like every time someone says this is going to happen, not all conspiracy theories are accurate. That's, I guess, what I'm trying to say. But there was that whisper the entire that Biden was only a candidate because he could win, which is very odd to say in and of itself because he's so bland. He's so not captivating at all. He's the opposite of candidates that have run on both sides of the aisle most of the time. That maybe that was really all the attraction was. That if you hated Trump enough, you couldn't hate Biden. He didn't have anything hateable enough, and obviously anything we could have known about him as far as the ways in which his family conducts business or the lies he's told over his political career. A lot of that was hidden from us. Anyway, there's now this big conspiracy concept that Biden will inevitably be forced to step down. If he doesn't do it willingly, if the Democratic side had told him from the beginning, you're going to at some point step down, and he just hasn't done it, then maybe they'll force the issue. That's the idea. That's the concept that's out there. What I will say is since they chose Kamala Harris as the VP, she would be the first female president. I'm not sure that that's the same as being elected as the first female president. I do wonder if you want to make history the way that Barack Obama made history when he got elected as the first African-American to be president, wouldn't you want to make it via an election? That's just my question. I know I'm throwing it out there. I don't know how much danger I'm in of being canceled myself, but I'm just curious as to why, if this is all part of the system, the rigged system in place, and not necessarily an actual true intention. If Biden had always been told that at some point he's not going to be president during his term, and that whoever is picked instead of him would step up to the plate, be that person, why would you go the road of having someone be, historical and not actually win? And that's my question. I'm not saying that the history wouldn't be made. It would be. If you have someone who's never served in the office of president before that is, anything, I guess that's technically history. Although a lot of us also say that we hope the best person for the job is in the position, no matter who they are. I think the most fair way to be woke in 2020 or almost 2021, thank God, the fairest way to be woke is just hope the person with the most credentials, the best ability to do the job is, no matter what they are, no matter who or what that person is, that person should be in charge because they deserve to be in that position. And that's true for more than just the presidency. But that's my curiosity. If all this winds up being true, and there's more and more whispers every day that it's going to wind up happening at some point, and I don't know if I believe it still, because conspiracies are always hard for me to understand because I can't really see them until they've been executed, which I guess makes me a sheep. But if we go down that road, doesn't it take away just a tad from the historic moment that would be? And whatever side of the aisle, Republicans have talked about different people that might run at some point for president that would be female as well, obviously. Nikki Haley is one of those people that a lot of people like. That seems like she might make a lot of sense in the years to come. But that's my curiosity. I'm throwing that out there. I'm risking being canceled by saying it. And I'm just asking the question if that's truly the correct way to go about these sort of things. But it's teased yet again. I know this is Fox News that's talking about this, that Biden might not be mentally fit and that there might be other things that come out in the days, weeks, months after he is sworn in, and how quickly his presidency ends will be something that'll be one of the most intriguing storylines of the next year. Let's hear just a little bit from Laura.
It's also very clear that Biden has cognitive issues at times, and since those are progressive as you get older, they're not expected to improve.
Right. I wanted her to make that last point. If you do believe that Biden is not just a guy that's struggled his whole life with a stutter, but that he actually does have cognitive challenges, that there's not a lot of ability for that to go the correct direction. I don't think the presidency, by the way, helps you with any issues. Everybody who serves in that office, outside of maybe Trump, just looks much older when they get out of the gig than when they started it. If you look at like the way in which any of the politicians age, it seems tremendously more rapid than the rest of us as human beings. So I'm sure that if you also go in with a difficulty, whatever it is, that it's not likely for that to get better either. I did see this news at a CNBC, so thank you to them for celebrating the last day of 2020 by giving us positive news. I'm kidding. Dead people may still get checks. That is a thing. The stimulus check, the $600 checks that are going out. We heard this so much after the first round of checks, the $1,200 checks that went out at the middle part of this past year. And people were talking about how it didn't make a lot of sense, but if you had taxes in the last 2 years, somehow people that were no longer with us, and not people that we had lost recently. These are people that had been not with us for a while. They got checks. And apparently we're just going to have a mirror of that situation, which to me, like, how do you not fix that? Out of all the things to say, like, all right, the government doesn't really do a good job of being quick to an issue, of getting something fixed whenever they acknowledge a problem. And I mean, anybody who's seen a pothole understands how difficult it is to get something repaired quickly every so often if you have a lot of government funding involved. But this feels like an easy win. This feels like the kind of thing that you could have figured out relatively quickly and been like, all right, these people are not here anymore. We probably shouldn't send them checks again. And from CNBC, it's probably going to be exactly the same as before. The Treasury Department's just going to fire these checks out there because, you know, it's easier to send and then try to take it back. That makes no sense. I feel like it's got to be easier to not send it in the first place. But yeah, if you wanted some good news about the way in which the government's going to be able to handle the latest round, and not the $2,000 version of check that people are still hoping for. This is just the $600 version. If it's $2,000, I can't even imagine how much money is spent. And they say that too, like McConnell. Everybody objects to the amount of debt we go into by adding money to these funds. Maybe my solution for all politicians is to at least figure out how to not send it to people that aren't here, that aren't capable of using the money and haven't been capable of using it since the first round of checks went out, because that's probably a good first step in getting a handle on this a little bit easier. I did see this story too, and I do like to every so often cover stories that I feel like could have waited. It's just one day now. If you publish this story today, you could have waited one day for it to be a new year and us to maybe have a higher tolerance for news that's not necessarily positive. Although this is, I imagine, a little silly. It's up to you how silly you think it is. And maybe if you've been a victim of one of these attacks, you don't think it's silly at all. But mysterious New York City Squriell attacks are having a tremendous just spike right now. This is according to Fox 5 in New York. The Singh family was interviewed because they had 20 unprovoked Squriell attacks that they were either witness to or maybe victims of since Thanksgiving. They have been randomly attacking people, said one of the members of this family. Attacking is anywhere from jumping onto them to scratching and biting aggressively. We don't know why it's happening. Random squirrel attack, and raccoon, by the way, worse than squirrel. Those are two terrors to society that are out there in the world in abundance. They both look cute from afar, but you don't want to piss them off. And actually also a goose is probably the third in line. I don't know where they tier, though. I think raccoon is 1, and then squirrel and or goose is probably tied for 2 for something you don't want to turn on you. But this is, I laugh a little. One other person described an attack that they were a victim of. This is Michelle. She's 56. She was attacked in New York on December 21st by a squirrel. She said that I'm not trying to be mean. I feel for you, Michelle. You and I it shouldn't have happened. I wish that it didn't. She said the squirrel didn't care. It just wanted something. It wanted blood. That's a pause. For a few days afterward, I would come out with a shovel just in case and look around, terrorized by a squirrel in her New York City neighborhood. She was very upset about it. The health department said that there might be an infection of rabies they're still looking into. It's very rare. They haven't found any proof of that yet, so they're not telling New Yorkers to be afraid of rabid squirrels. If New Yorkers believe they have observed an animal infected, though, they should call their local 311. Any resident who has been bitten should contact a doctor and make a report to the department's animal bite unit, which is awesome that that's a thing in a lot of places. But I can't get over the fact that this woman is describing her horrible attack, how a squirrel wanted blood, and then how she'd go outside with a shovel just in case. This story could have waited. The squirrels have not taken any lives. We're not protecting lives in this news so far. It seems like everyone's been capable of making it through their squirrel ordeal, which is now a T-shirt that I desperately need, and or a band I should get started, the Squriell Ordeal. But as we look at this story, I just think you could have waited 24 hours. You could have told me tomorrow to be aware of squirrels and just let me have tonight. That's what I'm going to do for most of this show. I can't avoid the news a little bit, but I'm going to try to have as much fun as I can on this show because it's the end of 2020. It feels different. I'm not even going to a big party this year because obviously a lot of those aren't things that everybody's doing. And yet I feel so excited. And I haven't been excited about a New Year's Eve since maybe I was a child. But something about this one, we're going to celebrate as hard as we can. And I want to keep saying it on our social media pages, on Chad's. I love to throw people there with topics and ideas that he has no idea where they're coming from. People don't play along as much as they should. But tell us how you're celebrating the end of the trash can fire that has been this past year. What are you going to do? I don't care if you're at home alone and you're going to do 20 shots for the end of 20, although I would not recommend that. That sounds utterly unsafe. But just tell us what your celebration plan is, because we all need to feel good. We all need to be in a good mood for the last day of one of the worst years I can possibly imagine, and certainly one of the worst ones I've been alive for in my 30-something years on this planet as a millennial. All right, quick break. The Chad Benson Show. Craig Collins filling in.
Being antisocial sucks. Hang with Chad's friends on Facebook, The Chad Benson Show. And if you just need some alone time, head on over to Twitter at Chad Benson Show. Either way, we can't wait to meet the real you.
This is The Chad Benson Show. My name is Craig Collins. I will cover the news throughout the day today, but you can't bring me down. You can't ruin my mood. The year is almost over, and I feel tremendously good about it. So good, in fact, that I want to know on social media how you're going to celebrate the end of 2020. Anything, everything that you're going to do is welcome there. Go to The Chad Benson Show on Twitter, The Chad Benson Show on Facebook, or even The Craig Collins Show if you want to tell me directly how you're going to be celebrating the end of the trash can fire that has been this past year. You might be adopting a dog. A lot of people throughout this year, throughout all the different challenges that we had in quarantine and what have you, I decided to go ahead and adopt a dog. And I love the fact that there's research out there as to just how great dogs are. And that's how upbeat of a show I'm doing today. I'm going to dive into a study about whether or not dogs are good for people. And the answer, unequivocally, yes. Time and again, a recent study of the University of Pennsylvania looked into exactly this. What do dogs improve in our lives, if anything? And I am a dog person. I'm not going to tell you what animal to get, but dogs are better than cats. Okay, I just did. But I didn't mean it. It's fine. You be you. Dogs improve your activity level, your cardiovascular health, your psychological state. Social media, I had looked into this from time to time, I guess. They even recruited people for studies like this over social media, and everybody was tremendously excited to participate. All participants were evaluated based on three different things: a baseline of 3 months of no dog life, and then having a dog. If somebody threw out on social media, and I don't have a dog right now, I want one. We live in a spot we can't get one, sadly, but we're going to get one soon, hopefully. We rent. Yes, I know. It's terrible, but we do. Anyway, I was just looking at this. If I was in a study or someone had offered a psychological study and the outcome was that I had to have a dog for 3 months, yes, absolutely. The participants would be, I think, clamoring at the doors for that. But they looked at how different people's lives were and evaluated them on a large amount of different things. And this studied over 3,000 people to see what it was that dogs improved in your life. And it's everything. It actually reminds me of what my brother says about his sons, his kids. He said that, when you have kids and they get to a certain age where they're active all the time, it makes you a much more active, much more out there person, because you just can't say no. And I get that. You can't say no to a child who wants to go play catch or something. And you can't say no to a dog, at least not all the time, who wants to do that. And maybe that's the biggest reason why dogs are better than cats. And I don't know if I want to die on this hill today. I've said enough controversial things already. But you don't play fetch with I've never met a cat who wanted to go out and play fetch or who even embraced me at the door the way that dogs do. And I think all those things are probably why it's so uplifting. But the amount of adoptions skyrocketed over the last year. This was a study that went back to April of 2020 when they saw a 30% increase in just that month of adoptions at a time when obviously shelters weren't even able to do things the way that they normally did. The human-dog relationship is being studied yet again. The University of British Columbia looked into this. They saw that even during times of true challenge in our lives, not just necessarily the year we all collectively had, but if something bad happens in your own area, your own economy, any of that stuff, that having a pet makes things easier. And maybe that's all it is. Tell me that. If that's what you're going to say you're doing to celebrate the new year on social media, contemplate finally pulling them. Maybe I do it tonight. Maybe I just go get a dog somehow. I don't know. Or maybe tomorrow, maybe the first day of 2021, it's me and my new puppy. That sounds like a real good time. The wife will have to be told she's out of town right now. When she gets back, she'll have to be informed of the fact that there's a dog in the house, and then also my landlord who says no to him. Come on, just give me the old approval one time. I also saw this story in News You Can Use, I guess, and we have a little time here, so maybe I'll get to it in greater detail in a bit. Exercising early in the morning is tremendously good for your physical and mental well-being, too. So if you get a dog and if you start exercising between the early morning hours of 6 to 10 a.m., you will have a marketed impact on your life in 2021, even if things still take a while to get back to normal and everything, still winds up being challenging for longer than any of us want it to be. If you start exercising earlier in the morning, or maybe at all for some of us, and then if you decide maybe just even a virtual puppy, maybe that's good enough. I wouldn't say that I would feel that way, but maybe these are solutions that you can use to make things quite a bit better for you. We do have serious news to get to. As I fill in here, my name is Craig Collins on The Chad Benson Show. We will talk about Mitch McConnell, his response to Bernie Sanders and the defense bill that's being delayed and why it's being delayed. We will talk about Ron DeSantis, who said something that I love in the last 24 hours, and I don't know how you feel about that, too. Obviously, Senator Josh Hawley is in the news a lot. A lot of people talking about him and his decision to go ahead and object on the 6th. It's something that we've seen before. I'll say it again and again. That's all coming up in a bit. This is Craig Collins filling in on The Chad Benson Show.
This is The Chad Benson Show. Independent thoughts, independent life. This is Chad Benson.
This is the Chad Benson Show. My name is Craig Collins, filling in on a lovely last day of 2020. Goodbye, the year 2020. I start off with more conversations about Josh Hawley, who is going to be all over the news for the, I guess, immediate future. MSNBC is a take. This is a fill-in host. I don't even care who's doing this. But this is one of many takes you're likely to hear in the next few days. Because it's not just the fact that Josh is going to support the president. He has an ulterior motive. Of course he does.
He's positioning himself for a presidential run in the post-Trump era. And he has decided that the best way to do that is to show that he is willing to overturn a democratic election and American democracy itself in order to keep Republicans in power. Hawley announcing today that he will object to the certification of some states' electoral college results on January the 6th, when Congress is scheduled to ratify Joe Biden's very legitimate victory.
Very legitimate victory. I don't know why he's putting so much emphasis on the wrong syllable there, but he's definitely diving hard into that commentary. Let's be honest. Let's say it as many times as we can. We should make a T-shirt. This has happened before. Democrats have done this. This has happened before. It's going to happen again at some point. It's a procedural thing more so than I know that some people who support the president a lot, your hopes might have skyrocketed in the last 24 hours that he still has a chance to win this thing. I personally don't see that as the case. This, as I said, happened in 2004 with both members of the House and Senate equally challenging an election. So they had to go through some procedural things that took several hours, but did inevitably wind up, going through. And the presidential election of that year was validated. It's likely to happen again. 2016, now there's video circulating of Biden having to shoot down objections before allowing the process to move as well. So this has happened before. I don't know why we keep having to say that this is the end of democracy as we know it. Let's hear from Josh, by the way. I thought he did a great job today in articulating his reason for the decisions he's making. And granted, maybe he is setting himself up to be a political player in the coming years and potentially make a run at the president of the United States. But I do believe in the way in which he's saying these words that it makes sense to go through this part of the process. I've said it about a lot of different things. I've said it about the court challenges the president has had for the election itself, that going through the process of validating and understanding things better is not in and of itself anti-democracy. It's actually exactly what democracy is, to get as much of a clear and and transparent picture as possible to any of the things that occur in our society, in our country, with our government. That is what our country is founded on, not the opposite. To say that challenging things, to ask for more conversation, more detail is inherently bad is idiotic. There's no other way to describe it. That is in and of itself a dumb opinion to be had, and many, many people have it. And I know I just got disrespectful, but I don't care. It's almost the end of 2020. I'm in a great mood. Josh, take it away.
I don't recall hearing the Democrats make any such outrageous claims when they were the ones who were objecting during the Electoral College certification in 2004 and 2016. Democrats have done this for years in order to raise concerns about election integrity. Now when Republicans, 74 million Americans, have concerns about election integrity, we're supposed to just sit down and shut up? I mean, somebody has to stand up here. You've got 74 million Americans who feel disenfranchised, who feel like their vote doesn't matter. And this is the one opportunity that I have as a United States Senator. This process right here, my one opportunity to stand up and say something. And that's exactly what I'm going to do.
Yeah. I mean, how do you get upset with a guy that says it like that? That it's his opportunity to get up and stand up and say something and cause not the overturning of our society, but to cause a procedure that takes hours to complete, where people discuss in greater detail the legitimacy of our election. An election that, again, I will say this, and I've said it a lot of times, I believe, that it was a unique election. The amount of at-home mail-in balloting that took place in a lot of places, some states pretty used to this kind of thing, a lot of states not at all used to the amount that we've seen of mail-in ballots. That is unique. There's no other way to say it. Whether or not it's actually fraudulent is, of course, a question for a lot of courts that have so far not seen any proof of that. But was it different than other elections in the way in which we cast our ballots? Yes, it was utterly different. Were a lot of people sent something in the mail that asked them to vote that maybe wouldn't have shown up to a polling place because, voting turnout is not always as high as it should be in this country? Are there a lot of people that might have sat on their couch at home, filled out a ballot and shot it back in the mail? And maybe that's one of the biggest reasons we had the largest turnout in the history of our country. Yeah, a lot of that happened. Is there a chance? I'll say this too. I don't have a lot of proof, but I'll say it. I'll go ahead and put my tippy toe in the waters of conspiracy theory. Is there a chance that maybe someone got a bunch of ballots, say a family lives together, and mom got them all, filled them all out, sent them all back, and didn't necessarily ask the kids who they were voting for or who they wanted to vote for? Yeah, there's a chance that things like that could have maybe happened. I don't know that they did. Is any of that fraud? No, not necessarily, although I guess in the last example that probably is if you wanted to throw mom under the bus. But these are things that made the election utterly unique. So to dive into this year in greater detail than in years past makes sense. It's not bad. It makes sense to try to get that information. Another example of this is actually some politicians who've asked for more transparency in the amount of COVID deaths that we've had in our country, the amount of COVID cases, and whether or not every single one of those cases is truly was truly a death caused by coronavirus, or potentially maybe something that a hospital added. And maybe the people had coronavirus, but there were people who died of gunshot wounds, or at least the claim is they died of gunshot wounds who died of COVID, according to the official hospital record. There's ones that were in car accidents that had the same thing happen to them. You've heard about a few of these. So asking for more transparency and more auditing of that information isn't bad either. And anyone who tells you it is, that it's not time for that, really doesn't seem to understand what is so great about our country. And it's that you can challenge anything. Anything you want to challenge, you can go through the court system, or in this case, have a politician do it. This is all things that have been rights given to us by our founding fathers, and they are valuable. They deserve to be utilized, and they do not upend our democracy when people... it's so crazy. I mean, if the objection itself is bad, why does it exist? I guess that's my question. Why have Democrats used it as often as they have? I want to pivot to something more positive, because that's a big part of what I want to do today. I saw this story in the New York Post, and I loved it. I love this idea. These are 5 COVID-19 survivors who had really scary illnesses. They had some very serious illness. Some of them came pretty close to losing their lives. All of them are American citizens, and some of them, were traveling. Some of them were at home the entire time. The New York Post interviewed them and asked them what their New Year's resolution is for 2021. And I can't think of better people to ask than people who lived through the big scary thing that we talked about all year. And I know a whole lot of people, a high percentage of people, and I've seen this reaction on social media when I mentioned that I have concerns about coronavirus itself, the illness, and its impact on our health, that 90+%, 99, some crazy percentage of people wind up being completely okay, don't have serious illness. I get that, and I should make sure to mention that more. But obviously, there have been some really harrowing stories. There's a story out of Chicago today about an 18-year-old girl who lost her life in Rapid. It started just before Christmas, and unfortunately, she passed away the other day. And according to her family, she had no pre-existing conditions. And her brother even had it back in September and was totally fine. He beat it without any symptoms at all. And for whatever reason, this girl, this 18-year-old, just wasn't as lucky. But here, these are some of the things that people who fought COVID, had serious infections, and wound up getting through them, said they're going to do differently in 2021. The first one is Kate. She's 38 years old. She had a tough fight with COVID early on in the pandemic. She said that her number one goal in 2021 is to become a mom. She wants to have a kid. She said that it's the biggest thing she thought of while she was fighting the illness, that she's always wanted to be a mother, and that she, hadn't had the opportunity for that to happen yet. And even if she's just going to go through treatment to do it on her own, because it doesn't sound like there's a suitable man in the picture right now that might, she has a husband, but I guess maybe they've had some struggles at times to get pregnant, but they're going to go the old in vitro route if they have to, because they want to be parents. She wants to be a mom. So that's fantastic. That's awesome news. Another guy by the name of Irving, he is 57 years old. He lives in Brooklyn. He had a very serious illness and actually also suffered a heart attack in conjunction with COVID-19. He said he's going to get in shape. He didn't care that he's a little older, that he's 57. He wants to be in the best shape of his life in 2021. It is his thing, and he's talked to doctors about doing it as safely as possible. He also said that he read over some different things in the Bible that really inspired him. Psalm 91 is one of the ones that he really believes in. It's a protection prayer that some of his family members had prayed while he was in the hospital fighting. So he just wants to get healthier, and he wants to get in the best shape of his life. More power to you. Get that done, Irving. I love that as a New Year's resolution for you. Another person by the name of Giovanni, 46 years old, serious illness, in the New York Post today, said that he's just going to get up and move to his dream city. He's always wanted to live somewhere else in his life. He's always wanted to be, in a different place. And so I guess he's going to book a one-way ticket to L.A. and just freaking move in 2021 and just be there and see if maybe he's going to have to sell his car, do some other things. But he'll figure it out, because life's worth living. And at 46 years old, Giovanni, after a scare with COVID-19, has decided it's time to get up and move. Now, granted, Dave Ramsey and some other people that I like in the world of financials will tell you to get a job first, not just up and move to a city. But I'm not telling Giovanni to do that. He's the exception to the rule, in my opinion. You go be you. There's another person here who talked to the Post recently and said that they will have empathy for their patients. This is a doctor who got COVID, I guess, 59 years old, Dr. Karan. And he said that he didn't truly understand what his patients were going through. And now that he's fought the illness himself and obviously had a more serious case of it, that the biggest thing, and not just COVID patients, he will have more empathy for all patients that he treats in all walks of life, because he understands now maybe the fear that patients have when they come in to get treated, or even to talk to him about potentially being afraid of being sick with something because of those scary moments that he dealt with earlier this year. And the last one of my other favorite ones in this list, Rose. Rose said that in 2021, the thing that she'll do after surviving a serious bout of COVID-19 at 40, she will finally launch her own business. She's tried for years to get away from, working for other people. She's wanted to be a business owner forever. She thinks she has a successful business idea on her mind, and she's got a plan and how to execute it. And she said, after fighting for my life, it made me feel like I deserve to live, and I've had a chance to start over and do it right. And so this year, 2021, Rose Blackman is in the business of her. And I wish her the best of luck. I hope it's a good idea, because obviously a lot of businesses struggle. I'm not trying to douse any flames. I'm not trying to throw water on your fire. You go be you, Rose. But that, to me, is a great article from the New York Post, and very motivating things that we can all do. So if you've had a New Year's resolution you've been sitting on for years, maybe 2021 is the year to get it done. This is Craig Collins filling in on the Chad Benson Show.
don't get into politics. As an ordinary suburban housewife, I feel a little disrespected. I teach my children not to name call.
You are a blabbermouth! Come on, man!
Guys, can we please keep the chatter to a minimum?
Chad Benson.
Just a loudmouth.
This is the Chad Benson Show. My name is Craig Collins filling in. You're going to see this all over the internet time and again today. List after list of things that happened in 2020. The good, the inspiring things, the challenging things, I guess the interesting things. All kinds of stories pop up on the last day of any year, and this year is no exception. I do have a problem, though, with one of the ones I found. I was trying to source some of this stuff to talk about it on the show here today, and I stumbled upon a list from fastcompany.com that had me scratching my head. They had the 8 most inspiring moments of 2020. This is according to, I guess, a website with, I have no idea what level of credibility. And some of the things that are on this list are probably fine. No mention of people battling and beating COVID-19, which I thought would probably be an inspiring thing, even just an offhanded comment at some of them. They said that the Supreme Court and some of the decisions they made were inspiring decisions. They said the Black Lives Matter movement happening was inspiring. Now, granted, a lot of people do point out, myself included, the difference between the movement, the cause, the discussion as far as what was happening in our society and how to make things more fair and better for all members of our community, and then the organization, Black Lives Matter, created by 2 people that were willing to admit they were Marxist. And certainly a lot of Black Lives Matter leaders of organizations, the one out of Chicago continues to pop up in my mind whenever I mention the difference between the movement and the concept that a lot of people peacefully protested under, and then some people running the organization that would say things like looting and rioting is okay because this is akin to reparations. Those are things that were said in interviews by leadership people in certain... And the other thing that's odd about the Black Lives Matter organization, not the movement, is that they don't have a true leadership structure. They did this on purpose so that no one could be a target, and also in their manifesto, so no man could wind up being at the forefront of their movement. But so each group kind of has their own local leadership, and the local leadership sort of says their beliefs as opposed to having a more, I guess, one track of mind. But anyway, that's mentioned on the list with Fast Company. They mentioned that anti-racist books top bestseller lists throughout the whole year. They threw a few examples out there of ones that, again, depending on if you've actually read the book, you might feel like they're not exactly anti-racist, but they are anti some forms of racism. White fragility is one of the ones they mentioned. That might have been an attack on white people, according to some. But again, these aren't actually the ones I have the biggest problem with. They also mentioned the fact that a voter showed up for the election. 159 million people voted, and that is the highest turnout ever, partially because you could do it from your couch. But here's the 2 that I have a problem with, Fast Company. J-Lo and Shakira ruled the Super Bowl as one of the 8 most inspiring moments, according to at least one website out there in the internet. In the year 2020, I did not remember that J-Lo and Shakira had done the Super Bowl halftime show. That was very much in the back of my brain. I forgot about it. And also, they mentioned that we learned that The Bachelor Seniors is in the works, a TV show, a spinoff of The Bachelor show, in which you see a lot of people date in a very strange way, and then someone proposes at the end, and you know that marriage is doomed, the same way you did of your high school friends that were going to get married. And you're like, okay, we know you love each other since you were both 14, but it might not work out. They're going to do a senior edition, and according to this website, that was one of the 8 best, most inspiring things that happened in 2020. Whoever wrote this article, that's all I'm going to say. I'm not even going to get that mad. I'm just going to say, to put in the same post that voter turnout was incredibly inspiring because about 160 million of American people voted, the most ever. And then also that The Bachelor Senior Edition is coming out, or that J-Lo and Shakira did a good job at a halftime show. Those don't feel like they're on the same page to me. That's just me, though, but I'm not her editor. This is the Chad Benson Show. Craig Collins filling in.
The Chad Benson Show.
Independent thoughts, independent life. This is Chad Benson.
This is the Chad Benson Show. My name is Craig Collins, filling in for the day. Ottawa Bureau Chief for the Daily Caller, David Krayden, joins us. David, welcome to the show.
Well, thank you for being here. Really, really good.
No, I'm glad to have you on. I've been following a lot of what the Daily Caller has written about China from very early on, the amount of lies that they told the rest of the world. I actually even saw a survey today. One of the most shocking polls of 2020 was the amount of people internationally, this is in all countries throughout the world, that have a more negative opinion of China this year than have ever had it before. Actually, 61% of all polling data shows people have a negative, not positive opinion of the country itself. And I do want to just preface this. I'm a millennial, David. It's 2020. We got to be as woke as possible. We're not attacking Chinese people. We're attacking the Chinese government. The government is the problem here, not anyone that hears a segment like this and says, well, obviously racism is involved in this conversation because we said a country and how they do bad things. This is not individual humans who happen to be from a country. It's the people in charge. What has China done in the world as far as slowing down the response to COVID-19 that you've seen? I know that there's been even recent articles from you and other Daily Caller members about people like Crenshaw stepping up his attacks on the country. What has been the challenge, and what have they done to at the very least, slow down our ability to treat and respond to COVID-19?
Well, it's very important to note at the offset here that China has behaved exactly like Nazi Germany has in the past. They have completely negated and denied what they have done, and they have tried to pass it on to somebody else. But what has China done in terms of nothing. China has done nothing in terms of including this disease. Nothing. No.
It is startling to see the way in which the World Health Organization stood behind China for as long as they did in saying that they were being transparent, they were being helpful. It really demonstrated, and I know the president took a pretty hard stance against the World Health Organization as well, in just how prevalent their influence was and how little they were willing to do to. And this is now, for anyone that thinks that this segment is also not necessarily based in fact, this has been proven time and again now that China absolutely deflated the amount of numbers of cases they had, were not transparent about the information they knew about coronavirus. And most importantly, I think, maybe to our listeners, David, the way in which they prevented outbreak in their country, the stuff that they didn't lie about, the ways that they flattened the curve, are things we could never do here.
China has a Marxist government which has state control. And this is what we don't want in America. But the point is, China lied about its numbers early on. And then they sent people around the world to spread that virus. There's no question China was spreading that virus early in this year. And
do you think that the travel ban did have as big of an impact as some healthcare professionals think it did early on, the president banning travel to China in lowering? I know that it's a weird thing to talk about in a year where we have so many cases in our country, but do you think that was impactful in slowing down some of the spread of COVID-19 early on in our country?
I believe China presented this disease against the United States, and I think the travel ban probably inhibited 300,000 to 1 million cases of coronavirus cases in this country. Yes, I do.
Yeah, absolutely, David. I've been following some of the other things you've been putting out, shifting gears just a tad at the Daily Caller. I saw that you wrote recently about a legislator in Minnesota who wants to challenge the inflated COVID death numbers here in our country. This is a demand for an audit. I've said on this show and anywhere that I broadcast that I don't understand our ability to ridicule people like this in the world of media, other places, because all this legislator to me is doing is asking for transparency, which I thought was what our country was founded on. I thought it was one of the values as a society that we have. If we ask questions and want answers, that in and of itself is not bad and or wrong. She believes that numbers are inflated, and she'd like details to demonstrate that they're not. I don't know why people attack a legislator for saying that. But what is your take on the push to get more transparency in the world of our COVID numbers here in this country?
Well, there's no question that it's a deliberate attempt to to rise in numbers of COVID deaths. And why? I don't think we need to ask ourselves anymore, because people are definitely asking why we're doing this.
Yeah, no, I think it's interesting, too, when you talk about the different ways in which maybe the president or anyone else has floated that hospitals might even be incentivized to have a case be deemed COVID-19 in order to get payment a little bit differently, a little bit more extensively from the government than for some other potential reasons for loss of life. And when the president, I think, floated that, there were people popping up on television stations, doctors saying, how dare you? How dare you say any of us would ever do something like that? And yet, it is a fairly likely practice going on in places throughout the country that might be part of the reason that our interpretation of this virus is so tremendously, exaggerated in the way in which we fear it.
Well, exactly. Ask yourself who is behind this in terms of who is talking about. You've got to remember that nobody said this was right or wrong.
Yeah. No, you're absolutely right about that. Let me ask you a different question. I also saw that you wrote about a recent poll. Black Americans were most optimistic about whether America is generally headed in the right direction. This is obviously, out of all the different groups of people to be polled and asked this question, it might be a somewhat surprising result to see that Black Americans were the most optimistic about it. Can you respond in greater detail to the information you saw in that poll? We might have lost him, actually. I think that I might have heard some of the connection issues drop out there, and he might have had some connection issues during the interview. I apologize to anyone listening for those issues, because he is a great writer for the Daily Caller. He's been writing about quite a few different things going on, and certainly in the world of China. And I know that some people who hear parts of those conversations just believe inherently that they're tied to anything other than just putting facts out there in the world. But we've seen time and again now in recent information that there have been examples. I mean, even just the fact that a journalist in China got jailed for 4 years for writing about what was going on the ground as far as the response to COVID-19 in her own area, and she has now been imprisoned. That's just the kind of thing we can't really fathom happening here in our country. We're going to try to work on some technical issues. I'm going to go ahead, if Phil is available, to take a break real quick. We'll try to get David Krayden back on to conclude this interview in just a second. Craig Collins filling in on the Chad Benson Show.
Hashtag me too. Hashtag immigration reforms. Hashtag help. I'm trapped in a hashtag factory and I can't get out. The Chad Benson Show.
This is the Chad Benson Show. My name is Craig Collins filling in. Apologies to Daily Caller's David Krayden. We unfortunately had some technical difficulties on our end with our phone system. We didn't want to silence David. We wanted him on the air to give his opinion, talking about a lot of different things, including the amount of disinformation China provided during the early days and even still now as far as COVID-19 is concerned. A legislator that I talked about in Minnesota who had pushed for more transparency in the COVID-19 numbers that exist throughout our country and other places, because honestly, some of those numbers are still deserving of that challenge. And finally, a poll that recently David covered in which I guess all Americans for the Economist YouGov survey were asked how optimistic they feel about the next year ahead of us, or just in general the direction in which our country is going. And Black Americans were the most likely to say that they were optimistic about the changes they saw occurring in our society, in our communities, and the optimism for a better year ahead than a year behind. And that is a very interesting result of that sort of survey, because it indicates a lot of things to me, and things that I think a lot of us may or may not be somewhat aware of, that at least in cases like, and I know I'm going to add some of the credit to the President of the United States on this, and that may or may not be the kind of thing that everyone agrees with. But as far as prison reform goes, as far as some things that had disproportionately impacted the African American, the Black community, there were changes there. Of course, the Black Lives Matter movement, more so the belief of the movement than the organization behind the name for the movement, there has been a lot of progress on fronts like that. So there are things that make sense in the world, I guess, as far as those poll numbers are considered. But it might be somewhat surprising. And I know that in certain areas, depending on, how, I guess, conversations went during the lead up to our election, the support for the current president of the United States from some minority groups, not just African-American groups, but, Latino groups and what have you, was much higher than people anticipated because some of the ways in which he impacted those communities was certainly valuable. All right, let's get on to one other serious story before we transition to more fun things as it is. It is the last day of 2020, and I'm tremendously happy that year is about to be behind every single one of us. I saw this story. It's going to break a lot of places about a Milwaukee healthcare worker who purposefully ruined 500 doses of the COVID vaccine. At first, there was assumption that this was an accident at the Advocate Aurora Health facility. They thought that maybe a pharmacy tech or someone left out what is supposed to be refrigerated doses of the vaccine overnight, and they were apologetic about it. But now I guess we've learned that this was purposefully done and that more than 500 doses were impacted and had to be discarded. The comments from those involved said, "We immediately launched an internal review and were led to believe that this was caused by inadvertent human error. The individual in question today acknowledged that they intentionally removed the vaccines from the refrigerator. We continue to believe that vaccination is our way out of the pandemic. We are more than disappointed that this individual's actions will result in a delay of more than 500 people receiving a vaccine. This was a violation of a core value, and the individual is no longer employed by us, to say the very least. The Moderna vaccine is one of just 2 that's currently available in the United States to treat COVID. And obviously, there have been 2.6 million doses provided to Americans thus far, but promises of about 20 million to be administered by the end of this year won't be hit. And any additional delays are going to be detrimentally impactful. I just can't believe this story. And I will say this, and I'm aware that I'm broadcasting to a lot of people that might have different opinions on whether or not they personally want to go get vaccinated. And I know that there's a lot of different nuances to how that question could even arise in your life. If an employer tries to force you to get a vaccine you don't want to get, is that against the core values of our society? Yeah, I think so. I think that if an employer starts requiring everyone to go get vaccinated, that's an odd world for us to live in. And as David Krayden from the Daily Caller was saying a little bit ago, those are some of the things that we saw happen in places like China that we don't really want to see happen in the United States. At the same time, I personally, when my number comes up, will go ahead and get a vaccine. I'm not as worried as some are about vaccines in general. I get a flu shot. That's something that I do. I know that it's not something everyone does or everyone desires to do, and yet it's a part of the conversation. But to actually potentially destroy purposefully, as this person admitted to doing, vials of a vaccine, maybe because of that same belief that this is not something we should be putting out there in the world in general, just makes no sense. Freedom of choice, the ability to do what we want with our lives as Americans, does go both ways. And I know that the vast majority of people I talk to on this platform understand that completely and agree with me on that. And the people that probably don't just click the radio off. So I'm probably only speaking to those who are already part of the choir anyway. But if you have a friend that's really afraid of COVID-19, and even if that person is not in an at-risk group, if there's nothing about them that screams to you that they should be as afraid of it as they are, that's their right to be afraid. They shouldn't go around yelling at everybody else to go indoors if the other people aren't of the same opinion as that. That's the thing about our society, I guess, in a way. And I think social media's prevalence in our society that I'm most worried about. It's not necessarily the way in which maybe some actions are taken at the highest levels, which we can all be concerned about. It's truthfully the way in which every single one of us is now living our life as though all people have to agree with us. That, to me, has been one of the most fearful things to transpire in the last few years. The split between Democrats and Republicans widening, and I don't mean just the politicians. I mean people you cross in your everyday life that describe themselves as a Democrat and or a Republican. The swath is the vast amount of split is getting worse and worse all the time. And it seems that you can't even be friends with, talk to, communicate with a family member, a loved one, anybody who has an opinion different than yours when it comes to the world of politics. And this is probably going to be one of the biggest causes of frustration and argument over the next year. The vaccine and how much it's out there in the world, how much it's utilized, if it gets us back to normal or not. I mean, I could play audio from Fauci, again, talking today, I think, in the last 24 hours about the newest strain of coronavirus and how worried he is about that, how that's going to probably blaze a trail throughout the United States, too. And there are only so many things that you can hear or have people tell you until you eventually tune out. You eventually go, all right, you know what? I can't. Their apathy is going to be through the roof in the coming year as far as inability to keep dealing with the challenges that are getting us to a place that's normal again. And the vaccine will be one of those things, just like the mask before it is one of the biggest challenges. And you saw people fighting in supermarkets, fighting employees at the supermarkets, fighting each other, all kinds of stuff. And I guess I beg, and maybe this is too woke, maybe I'm being too millennial, and this is the wrong approach, but I beg for tolerance from everybody. I met somebody recently who is a Trump supporter, thrilled that Trump won in 2016, went to the inauguration, has T-shirts, cups, all kinds of stuff, and is very proud of the fact that she supported our current president and very disappointed in the results, of course, of the last couple months and would like to see them overturned. But the biggest thing she told me, the biggest takeaway from a conversation with her that I thought was important is she doesn't have any friends anymore that didn't vote for the president. She said all the people who disagreed with her politically stopped wanting to communicate with her. She was in a couple different performance groups for theater things in her community. She was in some other stuff. As her support of the president has continued to be at the forefront of maybe some of her social media pages, she's had people that just won't tolerate her as a person. And nothing else changed. She's the same person she's been. She cares about her friends still. But because she supports something that they don't, they can no longer communicate in any form whatsoever. And that is the true danger and the thing that my resolution for 2021, as achievable as it can be, I will attack politician after politician for being an idiot. And I will probably attack every other story every so often about some other things that make no sense to me. But there is some level of tolerance that we all need to have for those that we disagree with. I believe. Maybe I'm alone in that belief. Maybe a lot of people are throwing things at the radio right now. I'm not saying tolerate AOC. I'm saying tolerate somebody that you know in your own family or your own community that seems to think that AOC has good ideas and at least not agree with them, but not need to, unperson them in your own life, like this woman told me. So many had turned away from her. I just think it's tremendously interesting as we move forward here, the way in which our opinions become a requirement that others have to share in order for us to even interact with people. And that I will always blame on the prevalence of social media, the ability to put all our opinions out there for the world to see more so than ever before. You don't have to stand on a street corner yelling into a microphone anymore. You can just type it in with a few different finger clicks on the old computer. And if anyone doesn't agree with you, you see the old go ahead and unfriend me now position. And that just makes no sense to me. All right, we're going to get a lot happier. It's almost the end of 2021. The show's about to be over. I'll be back in a bit. Craig Collins filling in on the Chad Benson Show.
This is the Chad Benson Show. Independent thoughts, independent life. This is Chad Benson.
This is the Chad Benson Show. My name is Craig Collins, filling in first and around the horn of the things going on in the world right now, in the world of politics, I guess, more so than anywhere else. I love Ron DeSantis more in the last 24 hours than I have in a while. Not that I dislike the guy. It's just I'm incredibly happy with his response to a question asked about whether or not he's had the vaccine yet. The coronavirus vaccine. This is what he said.
No, so what I've said is I'm willing to take it, but I am not the priority. They're the priority. I'm under 45, and so the people under 45 are not going to be first in line for this. And so when it's my turn, I will take it. But this is who I want to be vaccinated. I want my parents, our grandparents, to be able to get it. And, granted, I'm an elected official, but whoop-de-doo. At the end of the day, let's focus where the risk is.
I got to play the end there because it's been my favorite. It was weird watching Harris and watching other people jump on television and celebrate their getting of the vaccine, because I'm sure there's a lot of Americans, especially those in at-risk groups, that are jealous because the vaccine has not been administered to the 20 million people we had hoped to get administered to. The president blames states for not having the response correct, not having the system in place to do that well. Obviously, a lot of states, depending on who they are, may or may not blame the president in Operation Warp Speed, which has been a tremendous success in getting a vaccine available to the American people as quickly as was promised. But let's just hear it again. That end.
Granted, I'm an elected official, but whoop-de-doo. At the end of the day, let's focus where the risk is.
I love it. I'm such a big fan, Ron DeSantis. That is such an excellent answer to the question as to whether or not you've had the vaccine yourself yet. You're like, it's not for me yet. I'm in a low-risk group, so let's get it to other people first. Because again, I don't know if that's how you felt, but that's certainly how I felt as I've seen TV coverage and conversations about some of the most important people in our country getting the vaccine first. And I'm not trying to totally deride that idea. I want to be fair and say that people like the president, people like, the incoming vice president, they deserve an opportunity to be vaccinated so that they can do the job our country has asked them to do of us. At the same time as it trickles down to lower and lower levels of government and lower levels of I guess, significance. There are people, and DeSantis would be fairly significant in the world of politics, that do feel that maybe it makes more sense to not parade those individuals around on television, but maybe get treatment to those who are more in need first, based on the information we have at this time as to how deadly COVID-19 is for those in not at-risk groups. A couple other things that are getting reacted to a lot today. Senator Josh Hawley, his intent to listen to members of the House and to also object to at least the election results in Pennsylvania, maybe some other places, and actually cause some things to happen. Not actually the overturning of an election, by the way, but mostly procedural things, discussions, and maybe a delay before inevitably on the 6th that things go the way that so many Democrats are saying they're going to go. Joe Biden will still be the winner of the election. I love some of the takes, to be honest, because as you've heard time and again, hopefully here and maybe some other places, that this has happened before. Democrats do this fairly consistently, at least in the House. They object every single time a Republican wins, at least in the 2000s, the presidential election. And at least one time, 2004, a senator joined in that discussion, which caused a delay much like the one that we expect to see in a few days. However, if you're anybody on the side of the aisle that's different than the president, if you're on the left right now and you're broadcasting on a station like MSNBC as a fill-in host, you're going to say stuff like this.
He's positioning himself for a presidential run in the post-Trump era. And he has decided that the best way to do that is to show that he is willing to overturn a Democratic election and American democracy itself in order to keep Republicans in power. Hawley announcing today that he will object to the certification of some states' electoral college results on January the 6th, when Congress is scheduled to ratify Joe Biden's very legitimate victory.
I've been told that I speak too fast in this show, but I don't think I could ever do that. I don't think I could ever pause like that and add the growl, very legitimate election victory. It's just crazy. It's crazy that there's such a purposeful misrepresentation of what does happen and has happened in the past. That's not coming up. People are not talking about how in 2004, the objection to some of the results, I think specifically in Ohio, caused a very similar situation to what we're about to see. And Democrats were the ones behind it, both in the House and in the Senate. And as I said, every single time a Republican wins the presidency, some Democrat in the House is like, nope, fraud. This was a lie. So we've seen this before. Senator Hawley did a great job of describing why, in my opinion, he is doing this, and also maybe setting himself up to be a potential candidate in a few years. This is an excellently answered question.
I don't recall hearing the Democrats make any such outrageous claims when they were the ones who were objecting during the Electoral College certification in 2004 and 2016. Democrats have done this for years in order to raise concerns about election integrity. Now when Republicans, 74 million Americans, have concerns about election integrity, we're supposed to just sit down and shut up? I mean, somebody has to stand up here. You've got 74 million Americans who feel disenfranchised, who feel like their vote doesn't matter. And this is the one opportunity that I have as a United States Senator. This process right here, my one opportunity to stand up and say something. And that's exactly what I'm going to do.
Now, what's interesting about this story, too, is actually something that happened on Twitter, which I hate that sentence, but it's always true. Walmart tweeted out that Senator Hawley is a sore loser, but then immediately deleted the tweet and then gave the explanation after the senator kind of responded to them by saying that it was a shame to see them do that. Actually, the senator also said that they do not pay their workers enough money. I'm paraphrasing, but he definitely went on the attack a little bit of Walmart. They had to throw out there later in the day on social media that it was someone who has control of their account, one of the people. I don't know if it's an intern or actually a paid employee. It doesn't really matter, I guess. But someone meant to do it on their own personal account and accidentally threw it up on the Walmart Twitter account. And so the explanation is that Walmart never intended to get in on this conversation. They never intended to weigh in on it for an opinion at all, and definitely apologize to the senator and to all that saw it, because it was not a post that was intended for their site. It does demonstrate every so often. I think the president does his own tweets, by the way. I think a lot of people believe that. But every so often, if you get angry at what someone, some company, or I guess a famous person, a celebrity, anybody, a politician even, puts out there in the world of social media, odds are, with the way that works, that it's not actually them who put it out. Granted, I assume most people have an approval process, most companies, most different individuals, to get things out on their social media pages so that it does go through some form of editing before it winds up out there. On the off chance that someone makes a mistake and thinks they're logged into something they're not logged into and then throws it out on their own, and then obviously it gets deleted quickly, that is a different story. But it's just tremendously interesting to me that one of the stories of the last day of 2020 has to be that Walmart apologizes for tweet attacking a Republican senator and the position he has in the upcoming election, or the upcoming, I guess, meeting that's going to take place on the 6th, because somebody accidentally tweeted it, and they just called him a sore loser on the Twitter page. That was the and I think that's so interesting too, just the sore loser phrase, because obviously back in 2016, anybody that was called the sore loser was quite upset about being called one, and now a few years later we do the same thing in reverse. It's always the case. Everything that can flip around and go the other way, it's okay, but when it goes one direction, it's not. And by the way, real quick too, for hot takes of the day on Hawley, Amy Klobuchar had one of the hottest takes, saying that this coup attempt is going to fail, that Senator Hawley is essentially trying to help President Trump win this election via, some nefarious means, and that will not work. I think to quote her exactly, this is how you run for president as a Republican in 2024. You join a coup attempt. Democracy will prevail. As lead Dem on Rules Committee, I will guarantee it. That is an Amy Klobuchar. And again, I can't help it. Why doesn't this hurt politicians more that they've done this in the past? Seriously, why can't our memories be valuable in preventing politicians from being utterly two-faced human beings? I don't know why. It's the only job in all of society that has this ability to just completely contradict things you said in the past, and no one really takes your job, doesn't go away. You can get reelected. Everything can be fine. Blatantly lie as much as you want to the American people. And, there's no real repercussions for that. That is the kind of thing that works time and again for all politicians. People who accuse the president of the lies he's told seem to forget that every politician you've ever encountered, or every politician you've ever watched on television, probably told some version of a lie in what they were saying, because the amount of people in that gig that tell the truth, the whole truth and nothing but the truth, is very, very limited. All right, let's have more fun. Let's take a break. This is Craig Collins filling in on the Chad Benson Show. It's the end of 2020. We're going to celebrate the good times by kicking this year into the back burner.
Deep states? No. Deep doo-doo? Yeah. The Chad Benson Show.
This is the Chad Benson Show. This is my favorite holiday of this year, at least, because it means this year is over. Happy almost end of 2020 to you out there. I've asked you on social media to turn to our pages, the Chad Benson Show on Twitter, on Facebook, or the Craig Collins Show on Facebook, and tell us what you're going to do to cap off this year, to celebrate the end of it. I have a few suggestions that came to me way of my Facebook page of what one listener said he thinks some people have been doing to celebrate the end of the new year. One of them happened a little bit earlier on this month. There was a guy in Pennsylvania who took to the highway, in Ohio. He was rollerblading on the highway, and just having the best time of his life. He was doing it naked, and he was wearing a panda hat, like a fake one, not a real panda. And I guess this was captured on many a video. A lot of people were somewhat amused, although I guess it's fairly dangerous what he was doing. Authorities in Ohio tried to identify the man who was filmed rollerblading because he was not apprehended at the time, and are maybe worried, according to the listener who sent me this, that he might turn to do it again today. But that's a fairly extreme way to celebrate the end of 2020. I'm not totally telling him not to live his best life, but that's probably a tad too far for me. People in Australia, I guess, are turning up on the Australia beaches dressed as mermaids. That's something that's been happening a lot over the last however long. I guess the last part of this year, social media photos of women that have mermaid costumes on and take photos at the beach have become widely popular for some odd reason. I don't know what it is exactly. I think I can figure out some of the things that it could be. But if you want to celebrate that way, maybe that's a good thing to do. People are stuck indoors because of COVID, it says in this story. And so one way that we were being creative about still having fun, maybe finding an area that you can go to and shoot a photo. I don't know if I recommend going full mermaid when you hit up the beach per se, but I guess a fun photo does make sense a little bit. There's also this story of the 8 lucky foods. So if you don't want to do anything else to celebrate the holiday, to celebrate the fact that I'm so happy that the year that we've had is about to be completely over, maybe a lucky food as part of your evening celebration is better than going mermaid or going rollerblading naked with a panda hat on a highway in Ohio. These are different countries that believe that specific food items are tremendously lucky to consume and to consume today. I don't know if anybody had these things last year, but maybe that's the ball that was dropped. The first one, the new in the Netherlands, it is something called the oliebollen, which is essentially a lot like a chicken wing, I guess. It's a kind of spicier food product. There's also a dessert product that kind of goes with it that's described as a small donut. But both of these things are very, very lucky to have at the end of the year in the Netherlands. In Spain, you eat 12 grapes. Specifically, that's what you consume, I guess. It's not necessarily more or less than that amount. I don't know why 12 is the lucky number, but maybe if you pop some champagne and you want to do something that's lucky to the world of Spain and maybe to you, hopefully in 2021, just go ahead with the small amount of grapes. In Italy, there's a few different items that are consumed on that day. It's a feast, actually, New Year's Eve in Italy, but the biggest, the most traditional meal is a stew that contains both pork and lentils, which has actually been described as 2 of Italy's culinary symbols of good luck. If you consume that stew this evening and you're Italian, like myself, there's an odd chance that maybe things will be luckier for you in 2021, at least according to some beliefs. The Ponchki in Berlin, which is a delicious donut product, is one of the lucky items to consume on December 31st. If you're in that area, or you just maybe, I do suggest that at least one person, and if you do this as a listener, please take a photo. Try to get as many of these items as possible into the old rotation this evening. There's a dessert that is used quite a bit in Greece. This dessert is akin to, I guess, kind of like a pie, kind of like a cake, but it's a traditional dessert product that has sugar, milk, eggs, even orange zest is added into it. More bread-like consistency than anything else. It's called vasilopita, if I'm saying that correctly. Vasilopita. You actually even hide coins in it, much like the king cake gets hidden. I think that's a Mexican tradition. And you just, the person who finds the coin inside the cake, hey, they're going to have the luckiest of the new year. I say load that thing with coins, by the way, if you're going to go that approach. In Japan, there is a few different products that are actually tremendously lucky. One of them is a noodle dish, a soup kind of noodle dish for years passing called the soba noodles. They are something that they consume in a lot of, I guess, quantity on this evening or just in general. But it may signify that the eater wishes for a long life and a fortuitous upcoming year, which I definitely do. So maybe make yourself some soba noodles. Recipes are available online. The American South, I haven't heard this tradition before, so tell me if this is accurate or not from this article. It says that black-eyed peas and Hoppin' Johns is one of the most common things to eat in the new year on the New Year's table, and it does bring about good fortune in the coming year, or at least that's the assumption of it. The black-eyed peas and later planted products that become a part of this dish are just a good luck charm, I guess, according to me. I've never heard of that tradition before. I am not from the South, though, so please tell me and correct me on what I'm getting wrong about that dish. Finally, in Ireland, just buttered bread is the thing that you have. This is very low key. This is the easiest of the things for me to pull off and maybe you to pull off. But if you want to have a lucky 2021 and you want to have certain food items that bring you more luck into the new year, I guess the easiest one to pull off is the Irish tradition of just butter, bread. Again, I feel like you're going to have more things on the table, even if it's just a party of you or a couple people. But I guess this tradition starts around the Christmas holiday of consuming this, and it goes all the way up until New Year's Eve, and where local children and others kind of collect and consume as much buttered bread as possible, because the days of the buttered bread tradition is one that's supposed to bring about good luck in the new year. So see, it's that easy. In order for us to have a much better 2021 than we had 2020, you just have to have two very low-cost items, butter, bread, and get you there in the new year. There's a lot to talk about, a lot going on. I'd love to hear from you on our social media pages. Tell us what you're doing to celebrate, to kick the year backward, because it deserves so handily to be kicked into the rear. Tell us on the Chad Benson Show on Facebook. Tell us on the Chad Benson Show on Twitter. You can also tell us on the Craig Collins Show on Facebook. But what, if anything, are you doing special this year to say goodbye to the trash can fire that's been 2021? Craig Collins filling in on the Chad Benson Show.
The Chad Benson Show.
Independent thoughts, independent life. This is Chad Benson.
This is the Chad Benson Show. My name is Craig Collins filling in. First the news, and then we'll immediately run away from the news and talk about other things. Mitch McConnell has responded to Bernie Sanders' attempts to get the $2,000 in every American's pocket by saying that it's not necessarily the way the president drew it up, and what Bernie is doing, delaying the defense bill vote, is not necessarily in the best interest of anybody. Here's Mitch real quick.
But now our colleague from Vermont is again putting political stunts before the needs of our men and women in uniform. Our colleague says he will slow down this vital bill unless he gets to muscle through another standalone proposal from Speaker Pelosi that would add roughly $500 billion to the national debt, which does not align with what President Trump has suggested and which has no realistic path to quickly pass the Senate.
Yeah, I have to continue to echo that last bit of the statement that was made there by McConnell, is that the president has added a caveat both times that he says that the American people should be given $2,000, although he believes that does deserve to be done on its own. But he has said that the bloated bills that got passed in connection with the stimulus package had way too much spending in way too many areas that made no sense, and those should be pulled back, something the House didn't do when it passed $2,000 or the change to $2,000 for each American. And then also a look into some of the things that protect tech companies from being held accountable for the things said on their platforms, for needing to censor some of the more outlandish things more correctly, or even just censor whatever they feel like censoring. Case in point would be some of the stuff that President Trump has dealt with on social media throughout his presidency. And that has also not been addressed by anybody that's pushing this $2,000 through. Bernie Sanders shocked in a lot of ways that he's on the same page as the president and yet still willing to attack the president whenever given the chance, which again makes no sense to me. I know that he has been saying recently that he is surprised to have an ally in President Trump on this. But I would think that with so few days left in the administration, this is the time where, you really do connect those dots a little bit better in order to maybe get some things done. Because a lot of people do believe that the $600 isn't enough money. They do agree with the president on both sides of the aisle, and they'd like to see more money given to the American people. I know everybody doesn't agree with that, but that is true that if you're going to stimulus, why not stimulus all the way? Why do a version that doesn't actually help instead of something that helps more? But that isn't the end of the conversation for the president, for Mitch, and for a lot of people. Unfortunately, it seems to be the end of the conversation for Democrats. Let's just write another check, send some more money, and then that's the end of the issue. I didn't mention this sooner in the week. I wanted to. I did see one of the craziest things ever at the end of this year as far as a TV show goes. The Masked Dancer. I haven't hated The Masked Singer. A lot of people have hated The Masked Singer. They think the show is gimmicky and silly, and I don't know why. I don't hate it. I watch sometimes. I'm intrigued. My wife loves it, so that's probably part of the reason. But I haven't hated that. But The Masked Dancer is an odd addition, an odd jump, and I just want a prediction from anybody out there that's willing to throw one up on our social media page. What is the next masked show for 2021? What's the next one after Masked Singer, Masked Dancer? What do we have? Masked Athlete, where you try to perform some sort of athletic achievement. Masked, I don't know. There's got to be some other ways to continue to juice this. And if it's not going to be on regular television, I'm sure Netflix will sign a deal to make it a thing. But who do we mask next? And what are they competing in after we have singer and dancer out there in the world? I don't know. Masked trapeze artist, that sounds scary, but maybe that'd be a cool one. Masked circus, this could all happen. I'm sure we got to get some people on it. I saw in this news, too, just something that made me smile in a couple ways. One, if this is legitimate, if this is actually a career path that might make sense for Justin Bieber, who's someone I don't talk about a lot on radio shows like this. But I salute it, and this is definitely a New Year's resolution, to say the least. But Bieber is reportedly studying to be a minister for a Hillsong church. That is accurate. Justin Bieber has been studying to become a minister, hoping to help lead Hillsong after the firing of a preacher there that he cared about. Justin doesn't plan to give up his music career, but he feels there's a bigger calling out there for him, and he's going to go the road of minister at 26. He wants to be a full-fledged minister in 2021. If he can go minister in the next year, we can all hit whatever our New Year's resolution is. I'm just saying. And I don't think that Bieber has been particularly anti-religion per se or anything like that. It's just a heck of a headline to read to you here from Page 6. And I guess this has been validated and it's accurate. If it's not, I apologize to Bieber. I didn't report this. They did. But he's going the world of minister in 2021. Which says a lot of things about the way in which this world can change on a dime. I also saw this story, and it's a feel-good story, and I want to share some of those, as many of those as I can here to get rid of the end of 2020 as positively as possible. There is a police officer in Massachusetts who bought two women their groceries after they were caught shoplifting a few days before Christmas. This story has gone viral. The officer's name is Matt Lima. He was dispatched to a local Stop and Shop grocery store where two women with two small children had been accused of not scanning all of their grocery items in a self-checkout lane and trying to exit the store. The two children with the woman reminded him of his own kids, he said, so he decided to help out. When the officer arrived at the grocery store, he spoke with one of the women accused of shoplifting and learned that they had fallen on very hard times and did not have enough money to purchase some Christmas dinner items that they were trying to walk out of the store with. The woman I talked to, she explained she had been working, but the mother of the children was not working and had some other family stuff going on, so he decided to help. Every time that we talk about ways in which, as a society, we want to do things like move on from police officers and defund the police, you can't forget about stories like this. There's stories like this every day in every community that don't go viral all the time because they're not what attracts the main talking heads on all the different news platforms to discuss them. But this guy, Matt Lima, is awesome. To me, he is tremendously awesome. He got covered locally by WAJR, keeping their community informed. That's my headline, my tag I just added for them. But he chose to help the women out. Obviously, that's his own decision. But remember, when you say defund the police, when you say things that you feel make sense because of some of the things that you disagree with that you've seen in the world, you're also telling Matt Lima to be out of a job. And that guy definitely deserves to keep being a police officer in 2021. My mother loves to text all my radio shows all the time. She just answered my question. What is the next masked competition show to be out there? She thinks Masked Chef might make sense. Throw on a giant mask and try to cook a product. I don't know if that makes sense to me, but it's probably better than my Masked Zoo idea. So if you want to keep providing those ideas to us on social media as the best way to goose the masked competition show idea in 2021, I'm all about those. And maybe Bieber gets involved somehow. Maybe we have, just a masked who is this celebrity and talk all about his ministry work, and then you find out that it's Bieber. Moving on to other 2020/New Year's Eve things, I saw a list of the most strange traditions. I already talked about some of the food products that people eat at the end of the year to gain luck. These are some of the oddest New Year's Eve traditions throughout the world. People do these sort of things, I guess, for the same reason, to try to bring about a better 2021 or a better new year. In Ecuador, they burn scarecrows. I don't know what that's about. They banish ill fortune and bad things over a 12-month period by setting scarecrows on fire. And that happens right at midnight on New Year's Eve in Ecuador. There's a lot of stuff that we would probably light on fire from this past year, whether it's just news articles or different kind of things. I don't know. I'm sure that you can think of something that you wouldn't hate to see not be around anymore. And I'm not saying anything that's actually a serious thing to burn. I'm saying silly things like, I guess, a scarecrow. But I can think of some things that might be fun to light a blaze. Maybe you do that. Maybe if you got in a relationship and you broke up during the time of 2020, you burn a photo or something. Or if you're like an ex-girlfriend I had in high school, you burn a hoodie when the breakup happens. I'm not getting into that story. I'm not making that mistake again on the radio. In Denmark, people break plates. That's something that's been a tradition for a long time. Broken plates. Apparently, there's a ceremony. This sounds like a ceremony I could get behind, too. Although, as I said before on the show, the wife is out of town. If she comes back home and I got broken plates all over the place, it's going to be hard to explain what happened there. But it would feel nice. There'd be a release in that. They hurl the plates out windows. They hurl them toward the ground as family and friends do this together. And this is just to, again, ring in the new year in a kind of odd, but I guess happy way. The 108 rings of a bell is a tradition in Japan. It's a Buddhist tradition that happens. It's believed to banish human sins. There's a big giant, I guess, bell that they ring 108 times. But if you want to do this in your own home and you got a bell and you don't mind making anyone else around you incredibly angry, go ahead and ring it 108 times exactly. Don't lose count, because that's not going to help you at all. I don't see anything about potential bad luck from 109 or 107 rings. But people apparently smile and laugh throughout the new year as this happens. I don't think this is the one for me. I think that's way too many rings of a bell. And honestly, I can think of maybe 20 to 30 rings as a limit for anything I'd be willing to do. In the Philippines, they do something called around things, hoping to bring in prosperity and wealth in the new year. Filipinos surround themselves with round objects. This is anything from coins or grapes. I guess coins can represent wealth. Grapes can represent prosperity. Even wearing clothes with polka dots on them is the kind of thing that people in the Philippines do in the new year. And look, I'm willing to do all. Part of the reason I'm even talking about this, spending so much time hitting all these and all the ways in which you might celebrate the end of 2020 is because I'm desperate. I'm willing to do anything it takes to make the year that's about to come for us much better than the year we just had. And I imagine it's going to be fairly easy for 2021 to be better than 2020. But I'm probably going to do as many of these traditions as I can handle. And I don't know if there's an overboard moment. Like if I do too many lucky things, do I wind up sending too much bad luck into the world? I hope not. I guess I might find out. In Italy, and I am Italian, I'm from the East Coast as an Italian, they throw furniture out the window. They do this on New Year's Eve. They just pick up old furniture, chuck it out a window, and that is supposed to symbolize a fresh start. Absolutely. Maybe a video on the Craig Collins Show Facebook page is coming a little bit later this evening. Make sure no small children or individuals or locals are around for this. It does warn in this article, if you're going to heave some old furniture out a window, you got to make sure you're not going to make contact with a human being. But that does sound like a fairly satisfying thing to do. Two last quick ones, and then I'll take a break. Wearing interestingly colored underwear is a South American tradition for New Year's Eve. I'm not going to get into too many details as to what luck is provided by red underpants, according to people in Mexico, Bolivia, Brazil. But apparently, there's some fringe benefits in the world of going a little extreme with the old colored selection there. I'm struggling through that. One last one, and this one no one's going to do, because even though it's a tradition in Argentina and it's been done for a long time, this product is way too valuable now. You toss toilet paper out the window. Any form of paper, traditionally toilet paper, heaved out a window to symbolize leaving the past behind as well, much like the furniture. I would rather, this is the most telling sentence of the year that we just had, I'd rather chuck a piece of furniture out the window than a roll of toilet paper. And that, I think, is something that most Americans would agree on. How weird has 2020 been? Goodbye. Hopefully the door hits you on the way out. Can't wait for it to be completely over in just a little bit of time. This is Craig Collins filling in on the Chad Benson Show.
Warning, no snowflake zone. Uninformed opinions are in danger of melting. The Chad Benson Show.
This is the Chad Benson Show. My name is Craig Collins filling in. First, I want to selfishly take a second to congratulate all radio people, and this is going to be an odd way to do it. I saw a story about a breakthrough listening. This is the latest in a new frontier, it's being described, of ways in which we can figure out if alien life exists. Breakthrough listening is new technology that allows us to hear maybe something going on in planets very far away. And one of the big things we'd be honing in on, the existence of technology, specifically radio signals, things that are being broadcast out, maybe other kinds of signals. I don't care. I'm being very selective in how I interpret this story. But radio broadcasters in other worlds, other planets, the alien ones, might be how we discover life somewhere out there other than here. And vice versa, it might be how some alien eventually finds out about us. And I don't know why it puts joy in my heart to think that an idiot like me would be the one that they'd first pick up. They'd be like, wait a minute, there's life somewhere in this Earth region. We're getting a broadcast signal of some kind. What? We have an idiot talking about throwing furniture outside? We're not going to check out that planet. But that's true. Apparently a new breakthrough in the world of studying the Goldilocks planets. Those are planets in zones that seem like they could be inhabitable, is breakthrough listening, which would be essentially trying to hear or listen for a radio signal, among other things. So you're welcome, world. If we do discover aliens and have a very boring press conference with Joe Biden as president that would have been way better with Donald Trump as president, it's likely because some jamoke in your community was saying something silly and or important, probably important and not like me on their radio. I did see this, a list of the new songs from 2020 that should be on your playlist this year for your New Year's Eve party, no matter how many people are going to it, no matter how big your celebration is. These songs are all terrible. Well, no, they're not terrible. They just are. Your playlist shouldn't be brand new songs from this year. We all absolutely know, by the way, the number one song that should be on anyone's playlist. And actually, you can tell me what yours is. I know what I think the right answer is. But tell me, if you're creating a playlist for this evening to celebrate the end of 2020, what are you potentially putting on it and why are you putting it there? You can tell us on all of our social media platforms, Chad Benson, Facebook, Twitter, or mine, The Craig Collins Show. I keep promoting it maybe a bit too much here on Facebook. Tell us what is the number one song in your playlist. Mine, I'll play it for you. This is going to be on heavy rotation this evening, and it's not necessarily, if anyone misinterprets this, to be happy about any of the stuff that happened in the last year. It's the exact opposite. It is to celebrate hard the fact that 2020 is over. Yeah, I'm clapping. Oh, yeah, I'm done. I swear. It's a party of one this evening for me. The wife is still with her family out of the country, actually. So I will be here on FaceTime. My friends all want to FaceTime and chat with me that way. But I'm just going to play Kool and the Gang and just be so excited to wake up tomorrow and to see the number click over to 2021. Not that I know that in one day all of our problems get fixed. It's not like I'm going to wake up tomorrow and try to hit up a movie theater and feel like everything's the same. But you got it. You have to. Something about this day, this evening, the end of this year has got to brighten your spirits more than it's ever in the past. And there's a lot of other songs that probably will make the playlist this evening. But Kool and the Gang, Celebration, is going to be high on the list. Maybe a little Prince, party like it's 1999. I don't know. But you tell me on our social media pages what is going to be some or the number one song you're going to be playing for yourself as you get rid of this past year, because that's the only way to say it, in my opinion. That's the only way to really approach the fact that the year is over. I wish every single person, I don't care what your politics are, I don't care what your beliefs are, I don't care if you like or hate me, if you think I talk way too fast, I wish every single person that's heard this radio show at any point today to have a way better 2021, that things happen for you that are tremendously good. That's the mood I'm in. By the way, real quick, I should mention some of the songs on the list of brand new songs you should listen to. Willow by Taylor Swift made this list. What's Poppin'? Jack Harlow, Bang by AJR. Some of them aren't terrible. Savage remix by Megan Thee Stallion. Yeah, these don't rise above any of the things that you can play from back in the day. These songs are nowhere near as good. More Than My Hometown by Morgan Wallen. Positions by Ariana Grande. Whoever wrote this article at the Post, I'm sorry, I'm done with you two now. Although I still hope you have a great 2021, because that's true. For everyone out there, celebrate safely. celebrate as intelligently as you can, or as whatever. I don't know. I don't care. And tell us on social media what it is special that you did, what music you played. Did you dress up like a mermaid and hit a beach? I want to know everything, and I can't wait to wake up tomorrow and feel like we got a lot of promise behind us. Happy holidays, everybody. Talk to you again soon. Craig Collins filling in on The Chad Benson Show.
This is The Chad Benson Show.